Expecting rain.
All right, we'll call this to order. I'd like to welcome everyone to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Apex Town Council, Tuesday, April 18th, 2017. I'd like to recognize Councilman Moyer for our invocation tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Please bow. Jesus, thank you for today, the freedom to worship in this country and the freedoms that we all enjoy. I just pray that you be with us as a council, as a town, as a state, and as a country as we go through some of these trying times that we're going through. Just help us come together more and to remember you through all of this, especially on the heels of Easter weekend and the amazing sacrifice that you had for us, that you did for us. Pray that you be with our service members overseas and here at home who protect all those freedoms that you've given us. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. At this time, I'd like to recognize the Scout Troop. Can you please identify your troop number for us? What is your troop number? 224. Awesome. Do we have a color guard today?
Color guard, present the colors. Color guard, post the colors.
It goes back there.
You can just hold it.
You hold it, then you'll post it.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Color guard, please post the colors.
No, there you go.
Color guard dismissed.
Thank you all. Be seated. And before we leave that, let me just ask if the troop leaders can identify themselves. Raise your hands, please. Thank you very much. And what is where do you meet regularly? Great. Thank you very much for coming tonight. We appreciate your visit. We hope you enjoy the evening as much as we do. With that, I'd like to now turn our attention to the agenda. Hopefully you were able to get one when you came in. It's a stapled set of white pieces of paper outside, and this will be our agenda for the evening. There's also yellow sheets that have the public speaking notes. Two important things that I need to point out. First is before you speak during a public hearing tonight, if you choose to, you should become familiar with that sheet of paper in its entirety before you speak. We will have a 3-minute timer if there are those. The second thing is we have a sign-up sheet that the acting clerk tonight will be collecting in about 5 minutes. So if you intend to speak in one of the public hearings tonight, you need to come sign your name in the next 5 minutes before she comes and picks them up and brings them over to me. If there are any questions, though, we will address them at that time. With that, I now turn to the agenda, seeing that there are no presentations. We look at the consent agenda. We have a late add-on consent agenda I want to call the council attention to. It's numbered 13, and you should be able to see the copy in front of you. Does everyone have one? All right. Take a minute and look at it since it is fairly new, but I think everyone's familiar with the purpose of this. So let me just ask if there is a motion to approve the consent agenda, or if someone wishes to pull an item for later discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, including consent agenda number 13.
Second that.
All right, great. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent with 13 included. Any further discussion on that motion? All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed say no. All right, the consent agenda is passed. We now move to the regular meeting agenda setting. This is on page 2 for those of you following along. This is where we determine the agenda and set the discussion topics for the night. We have the printed agenda in front of us. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda for the night?
So moved. I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, we have set the agenda for the night. We now move into, typically we would have public forum. I'll point out that that happens on the first meeting of the month, so we now move to the public hearings on page 3. Public hearing number 1 is a public hearing and possible motion to adopt an ordinance on the question of annexation for the James W. Kelly property, approximately 10 acres, and Diane Ken, Planning Director, is presenting tonight. Ms. Ken.
Good evening. So just to orient you to the site, this is Old Jenks Road, this is West William Street, this is the edge of our boundary here at Holt Road with Town of Cary. This property is next to Charleston Village, and there is an approved subdivision plan for this property. So they are requesting annexation in order to get their construction plans approved. They do need to have the ability to hook up to water and sewer in order to get their construction plans approved. We do recommend approval of their annexation.
Any questions for Diane? All right, thank you, Diane. With that, I'll open the public hearing for number 1. Checking the sign-up sheet, I don't see anyone has signed up. Just want to make sure that's not a mistake. All right, not seeing anyone, we will close the public hearing on this matter, refer the matter back to council for discussion leading to a possible motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion on that? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, public hearing number 1 has passed unanimously. Public hearing number 2, possible motion to adopt an ordinance on annexation for the Olive Chapel Professional Park property, approximately 9 acres. Diane Ken presenting.
Good evening. This property is located at Olive Chapel Road and Chapel Ridge Road near the 540 bridge here. And this is approved as a site plan for the Olive Chapel Professional Park. They need water and sewer, and so they need to be annexed to get their construction plans approved. Staff recommends approval of their annexation.
All right, thank you, Diane. Any questions for Diane? All right, with that, I'll open the public hearing. Referring to the sheet, I don't see anyone who has signed up. Did anybody intend to speak on this public hearing matter? Not seeing anyone rise, I will close the public hearing, refer the matter back to council for a motion.
I'll make a motion. We approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no.
No.
All right, so that passes 4-1. As usual, I'll just ask, did you care to make a statement on your nay vote?
No, just consistent with my previous vote on the project.
All right, thank you very much. We'll now move to public hearing number 3. This is a public hearing possible motion to approve amendments on the 2030 land use plan recommended by the Town Council Planning Committee to add commercial services and office employment to a specific area, which Diane Ken will present to us tonight.
Okay. So we are talking about the area where Hume Olive Road tees into New Hill Olive Chapel Road. It's out near the American Tobacco Trail and the New Hope Valley Railway. Basically, this area has been looked at in the past and designated on past plans as an activity node. On the current 2030 land use map, it is only designated for medium density residential in this quadrant and then low density residential in these 2 quadrants. The planning committee had requested that staff make a recommendation for this area, which we did previously. I went to planning board with retail, the red stripes in all of these areas. The planning board was interested, that's this here. The planning board was interested in seeing some sort of step down into the low density residential areas and asked the council to consider that. So council referred it back to planning committee. Planning committee considered this option, which would be to have a step down from the retail on the 3 quadrants of the intersection to office. And again, the residential would remain as an option. And given that there's only 2 stripes, there would be no percentage requirement for non-residential. It's just to give options for future rezonings. And so the planning board did consider this at their April 10th meeting. They unanimously recommended approval. But they did want us to mention that the council should consider the location of the New Hill Valley Railway and the existing ponds and drainage patterns in the area based on the public comment that was received. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Diane?
The drainage would actually be looked at more at site plan, is that correct?
It would be, there was concerns about farm ponds that feed into farm ponds, and concerns that if these were to go to commercial use, the ponds that feed into the other ponds would potentially be filled and go away. And that was the concern. I will say that on one of the, it would be the western area plan that preceded the 2030 land use map, where this area was shown as an activity node. The idea for this activity node was recreational uses to support the American Tobacco Trail. And so the idea was for things like the supply shop we have downtown, something like that, might have something out near the American Tobacco Trail, that you might have basically a trailhead, but it would be private, potentially private users that would do that. The uses that are proposed here are consistent with that original thought. During the 2030 land use map amendments, I think that node was removed based on not having a lot of interest from the previous plan, but it's just probably premature in thinking about what could be out there at some point. But again, it's not a rezoning, it's just to give options for potential future rezoning.
What was our reasoning or discussion around we have stepped down on 2 of the 3 corners here, we're stepping down to office option.
Mm-hmm.
Why did we not do the office around the 3rd?
This is a medium density residential, and the concern that came directly from planning board was the stepping down to low density residential. The medium density residential typically would have both townhomes and single family, and the idea would be that you would do the single family away from the commercial, and you would have townhomes as the intermediary land use. And so they weren't as concerned about having a different stripe there. So that's the way that it was referred back to planning committee. And you know, in terms of what could go out here, I think it's good. This is a nice square 10-acre area. It's a nice location for a decent sized project. I think if we just kind of arbitrarily cut it off, it may make it difficult for a project, non-residential project, to figure out where they want to go. And I just want to point out that in the retail areas, office is allowed, and that's why the original proposal was just for retail, because it allowed office.
Any other questions for Diane? All right, thank you, Diane. With that, I'll now open the public hearing, and I have one person signed up, Ms. Stephanie Thompson. Come on forward. And just as usual, please give us your name and your address, and you'll have 3 minutes, and there's a green, yellow, red light system there on the table you can see. Those will turn on. When you see yellow, you're almost out of time. All right?
So Stephanie Thompson, I live at 8917 Barker Road, which is basically directly across the tracks from the corner, from this whole area on the corner of Barker Road. And more, I had questions than comments. Certainly I know several neighbors, and I attended the planning board meeting. There was a lot of questions about exactly what can go into these areas and when those restrictions happen. The planning board answer was down the road, things get less lenient as time goes on, but that's no guarantee. And there was a lot of concerns about potential for gas station and, again, runoff because of the water. So how does are those restrictions you can put on now, later? We're just really kind of confused what can be there and concerned about what can be there.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Thompson. And normally this is a time where this is an opportunity for speaking to us, and certainly staff can address some of those questions probably better than the council can. But I'm sure that in looking at that, they've recognized that there are some uses there. With that, I don't see anyone else, who intended to speak. You want to speak in the public hearing?
If I may, yes.
Yes, okay. And I think we have a lighting difficulty, is it?
No, she didn't, the green light doesn't come on anymore.
Oh.
The yellow light comes on at 30 seconds,
Okay.
the red light comes on at 15.
Oh, no green light? Oh, so it's actually working?
So it's actually working.
Okay, got it, okay, all right. When you're done, can you come up and sign this? So I
Yes,
get your-
and thank you. My apologies for not signing in earlier. My name is Scott Smith, and I'm here on behalf of the New Hope Valley Railway. We have an active rail corridor that is adjacent to the proposed area, and we don't have any comments pro or con regarding the change, but I just wanted to point out for the council that there's a rail siding there, and since it is an active duty rail corridor, there are going to be noise and other emissions. And so in the future, whenever any commercial entities are considered for there, you may want to take into account the noise and anything so that there's no problems at that point in time.
All right, very
That's
good.
all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, and, here's the sheet. Okay, last call for the public hearing. All right, not seeing anyone else, I'll close the public hearing and refer the matter back to council.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Yes,
Okay.
Go ahead.
for me, I think we need to make sure that we address the concerns we just heard, and if there certainly are uses that we as a council can remove. So I'd like to know what some of those uses,
Okay,
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that we need to, I don't know what the neighbors' concerns are, so I would like for staff who would know much better than me what fits there, but I am concerned though.
okay. Did you want to address that, Diane?
Sure. So this is not the time when we can remove
Right.
uses, it would be at a rezoning, but, certainly you can give staff guidance about the types of uses you'd like to see there. As I said, in the past, we've really seen this as almost like, basically like an area that would be a trailhead for recreational uses. Those are the types of businesses we would like to see there. I would say that a gas station would not be appropriate. It would be more appropriate to the south at Old US 1, or more appropriate at the other end of Humiella Road on the other side of the high school. And so if you all agree, you can tell us that, and as developers come and talk to us, we can tell them, yes, it's shown for retail, however, there are certain land uses that are not a preference in this area. I can already tell you, I know you would not think a car dealership's appropriate out here.
Correct.
I'm not gonna have any qualms about telling a developer that's not going to happen. But if generally all automobile uses are not what you'd like to see in this area, we have no problem with advising folks when they come in. They can ask for whatever they'd like to in the rezoning, but there you go.
We show no favors here.
No favors, right. So anyway, if that's the desire of the council, you can just tell me right now, and we will let the rest of the planning staff know that when developers come in this area, we really would like it to be more compatible with the rural character of the area and the kind of thought process of this being a node for recreation.
All right,
So if a bike shop comes in, that's
Yeah.
appropriate.
there you go.
No gas
That's
station.
perfect.
And
No gas station, which,
I think,
You might want a general store, but you wouldn't want the gas station part of it.
Yeah,
and
I
maybe
think-
no drive-through restaurant.
yeah, if I can, rather than us having to try to go through the 48 items or whatever, maybe, it might be 48 now, but I think Diane has expressed that she understands the general nature, and certainly as a planner, she knows what could go really well here. So I'm okay with just trusting staff that they've heard this and that they will guide appropriately. Certainly at a rezoning, if there's a proposed use that we don't like, we can request it be removed from the rezoning at that time.
Right, I
And-
just wanted to get that out
Yep,
there because
sure.
there could be a whole nother group here,
Sure.
so I just wanted to make sure that sort of got on the record, so.
No problem.
Thank you, Ms.
Rezonings
Ken.
are public hearings,
Yes.
so
Right.
the neighbors will have all the opportunity in the world at that time to weigh in.
Sure, but we do like to advise the development community so they don't waste their time and money going through a process for a use that's just not appropriate and will not get approved.
I think you're spot on with your thoughts.
Yep.
With the outdoor center, the trail, all that stuff.
Yeah, I think for this particular area, we've had a lot of, through the many years that I've been here, a lot of, input about what is appropriate, isn't appropriate. So I think that we can do that, and we understand, we live here in Apex too, we understand, I agree, I don't think a gas station's an appropriate use in this, location.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so, we're now still discussing, the motion to approve. Any further discussion items?
I just think properly done, this type of a thing makes a better neighbor than
Yep.
another subdivision, so
Yep.
it's just how we put it in, and I think it'll be a really nice thing for out there.
All right, not hearing anything further, I will call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that passes unanimously. We now move to public hearing 4. Public hearing 4 is a possible motion regarding amendments to the UDO related to solar in resource conservation areas. Amanda Bunce is presenting.
Good evening. This text amendment, as you said, is a proposal to allow solar panels and associated equipment on the dam of a BMP, or as it will eventually be called, a SCM, stormwater control measure, when that stormwater control facility is classified as RCA. We typically do not allow improvements to be within RCA, but this proposal is to allow that to happen. The planning board did consider this amendment at their April 10th meeting and unanimously recommended denial. And I can answer any questions that you may have on that.
What is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I was gonna say, I saw staff recommends approval.
Staff did recommend approval, yes.
So with, in contrast with what the planning board said, what were your guys' thoughts on approving something like this?
Well, I explained, answering some questions at the planning board meeting, that any type of improvement on the dam of a BMP would have to pass all engineering reviews, structural, get all permits necessary, approval by the state if necessary, before it could be allowed. Simply adding it as an approved use within RCA doesn't give them the green light to install it. They still have to meet all other requirements, get all other permits necessary in order to install the solar. This just gives the opportunity for them to someone to investigate if it's even possible to do it.
And a tree or shrubs with roots doesn't make sense in a BMP versus a solar panel because the roots could deteriorate the dam.
That's correct.
Any other reasons that, we don't allow trees and stuff inside of those?
That's one of the primary reasons.
Any other questions for Amanda?
What was the reason for the denial?
There was someone that came to speak and expressing concerns about the structural integrity of the dam. There were concerns expressed by planning board members. There was concern expressed of whether the state would even allow something like this to be installed on the dam of a BMP. And we did not have an answer to that question. And I reiterated, someone would have to get approvals from everyone necessary in order to do it. This just opens the door for it to be a possibility.
All right. All right, thank you, Amanda. At this time, I'll open the public hearing, and I don't see anyone on the sign-up sheet. Don't see anyone rising to the occasion, so I will close the public hearing, refer the matter back to council for discussion leading to a motion.
I propose this, quite frankly. Anybody surprised?
I assumed.
As Amanda said, it just opens up the opportunity. If they decided they wanted to put one of these solar PV systems on a dam, they would have to go through structural analysis, get it stamped off, get permits by the state, and that sort of thing. And the idea is a retention pond dam is kind of wide open for sun. we don't have trees on the dam, as was mentioned, so it's an ideal spot to put one of these if they so wish. And it's resource conservation area, and what could be kind of more conservation than providing for solar photovoltaic system if they so wish to put it on. It's a conservation item, basically, on a dam. And it's certainly not like we're cutting trees down in a resource conservation area to put one of these things in. Everything is wide open in it, and it can be done very nicely.
The only concern I would have, and it's a minor one, is the visual appearance of that if a resident's backed up against a commercial area, if they have solar panels, field solar panels in their backyard, looking out their back window, but...
And I understand it. You know, if it's the south-facing part of the dam, it just goes flat onto the dam, so it...
On the side of the dam, you're saying?
On the side of the dam.
Okay.
It would just, you know, be... I can pass this, happen to have a little sheet here.
But you're saying it doesn't have to be elevated on a...
No, it doesn't. If it's on the back side, if it's on the north side slope, and that's the top one, it would be raised up. But that's kind of the developer's decision if he wants to put it in and
Oh, this is coffee. Okay.
Oh, okay.
so
Any-
from the aesthetic standpoint, I think it can be very nicely done. Appalachian State actually has a solar panel system.
I'm sorry, where?
Appalachian State.
Appalachian.
Oh, you meant Appalachian State.
Appalachian State, I'm sorry.
North Carolina.
Where are you
has to
from,
be that way.
California?
I used to call it Appalachian
They're
too,
throwing
so
me
don't
out of
feel
many
bad.
places. Appalachian.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I live near the
You've been
Appalachian.
naturalized.
Yeah.
Hey,
You know, they do.
I'm an engineer, I can't
They
help it.
do, and they also have a big turbine. I mean,
yes, they do. They have a
they
big-
do some interesting things there. If I could speak to this, when I looked at this, when we were on the planning committee, I tried to think by adding this in here to allow, are we creating a situation potentially that we would regret if somebody were to get all the stamps and everything? Because I don't think, for me, if it is going to be a civil engineering problem, I'm not sure that's where we pass policy. That's a technical block. But the one thing I thought of was same as what Councilman Schultz said here is just from the aesthetics perspective, could it be installed to a point that the neighbors that have visibility to it would have an objection of some kind? Because it is resource conservation area, so by having that there, even though you're not taking down a tree because it's an earthen dam typically, they may have an expectation of seeing greenery. So that was my only concern, but I thought that this was simple enough of an allowance. There are still plenty of hurdles to be leaped by the person who decides they want to do this. I thought this was at least reasonable enough to go ahead and proceed through, so that was kind of why, you know, it came out of committee with let's let the planning board hear it and see what they said. And I think that was an interesting question I wanted to know, is what was their primary objection? I didn't hear aesthetics though. Did they talk about the aesthetics from the planning board? Okay. Okay, well, I wanted to speak on that simply because it came through planning committee and I was part of that.
I guess the one comment is, like, for example, take Lake Pine Park, for example. I would not want to see solar panels on that dam, because to me, it's a natural looking area, and to me, solar panels are artificial looking. So, that's my concern. I don't know, I'm not saying that you're plotting that far ahead.
I just thought about that. You said that we would give that a try.
So, I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, then I certainly won't bring it forward. And the thing is, on the front side, they do lay right close. If they decided to do on the back side, you know, the north side, I doubt if they would, but if they did, it can't be a very big system because you run into shading problems very quickly on a downslope. Yeah, so you can't do it. So, I think the aesthetic aspect is in the eye of the beholder. I love them, just like Tim Donahue loved his water tanks. So, anyhow, but I do understand the aesthetic concern.
So you have any suggested language you'd like to add to it, Councilman Schultz?
Me? No,
Okay.
I can't think that fast.
I mean, this doesn't sound like it costs the town anything but staff time, maybe to review it. It's gives someone an option, as the chair of the environmental committee, want to try to think about innovation and things that are consistent with environment. If it provides someone an option, but it has to go through a lot of hoops and even with state law possibly, and I think if we can add some aesthetic language in there related to location, then, I would be okay with this as an option, but, that's, yeah.
Would it be wise to check with the state before you approve something like this? I don't know. I just hate to approve something and then find out, state's not gonna allow it.
The one problem that you might have with the state is that they require turf grass to be planted on these surfaces. However, from a technical standpoint, that can be, for erosion.
Right.
But that can be taken care of by properly managing any water that comes off of these things and stuff like that. Would they approve it under those circumstances? I don't know. I think they would, but I'm not sure.
I don't know if there's any way we would know. If it's not in the law now, I don't know if there's any way.
I get the sense they wouldn't approve it, just kinda.
Let me ask, if you don't mind, Amanda, I'll ask planning department generally, but you're presenting. Do you know of any existing allowed solar panels on BMP or in RCA, on the dams,
I'm not aware.
in the state,
I'm
where
not-
it's relevant, in the state?
I'm not aware of a situation.
Okay. It doesn't, not that it means anything other than we would be blazing a trail, perhaps, and maybe it would be allowable. I think, I'd like to tack on a little bit to what Mayor Pro Tem Dozier said. Maybe, I think a little aesthetics here would be certainly, or guidance, or height, but I don't know how far we want to go down in that. I think maybe, for now, just check the temperature of the rest of the council to see if this is a direction we want to go. What do you think, Councilman Moyer?
I am okay with providing this option to developers. I think the process will vet itself out as they go down that path if they choose to do that.
Mhm.
If it's not feasible, then, they won't do it, I'd imagine, but I'm
Okay.
okay with opening up this option.
Okay.
In general, I know, I'm sorry, did you wanna go?
Oh, I'm fine with this as long as it's always an option and not required, and that it doesn't become something that is required over time. So as long as it's optional, the town's not paying anything for it, and I think it's a fine idea.
In general, I have no objections. I guess I wouldn't mind seeing some kind of language to speak about the, buffering, blocking the aesthetics from neighbors and things like that.
Okay.
That's all. I
All right.
don't know. But
Well-
in general, I have no issue with it.
Yeah, and I think that would have to be worked out. One thing, that you really can't buffer the blackness to a degree. If it's on the sunny side facing part, you could step out away from the dam and put up screen, but you can't put it up too high once again, because
Sure.
these things don't work in the shade.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So
Well, yeah, I wouldn't suggest anything to block the shade, but something, a buffer between a neighbor and the wall itself.
Well, so it sounds like we kinda got consensus here. Is there a motion that someone is willing to make?
I'll be glad to. I think I would like to make a motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve this amendment as written, and certainly Amanda and Diane have taken notes on some of the conversations, but let me see if there's any discussion on the motion.
I'd like to suggest that we either have staff or go back to planning, however we wanna handle it, to address the aesthetics issue. But in general, I'm not opposed to this. I just think I'd rather take a step back, and I wouldn't mind checking with the state either.
I think, to me, that if we're just allowing it in the UDO, and checking with the state, the developer would have to take care of all of that.
Yeah.
Structure and things like that.
I just feel like we don't wanna have all the Ts crossed and Is dotted yet. I think we're close, but I don't know. It's a minor concern, but still, it's a concern that I think needs to be addressed.
Any other discussion?
I just don't know if that's some information that's available. If it's not done, that's my concern, is that
I'm more concerned about the aesthetics.
you may not be able to get an answer you're looking for if there's nothing to look at in North Carolina, so we just kind of, you know
So
what I'm saying?
I think, if I can address that a little bit, I think if we vote to approve this as is, we can still direct staff to come up with a second pass, or maybe a second set of amendments to refine this a little bit, to provide guidance on aesthetics and or the impact on neighbors, let's say. And I think they certainly could come up with language if we asked them to do that. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. It's all hypothetical right now. The
Sure,
problem is,
sure.
and it's really going to be site specific as to what has to be done. But we do require certain things of developers, certainly, to try to get aesthetics in the town. Maybe, yeah, we could.
All right,
We can certainly do that.
I think we've kind of discussed this now. Let me call for the vote if there's no objection. Okay, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that passes unanimously. And let me just ask real quickly before we move on to the next one. If, Amanda, do you have any questions for council based on the conversation related to aesthetics that would help you kind of put together some refinements?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to ask. So, are you more concerned about the aesthetics of the panels as they would be visible to outside of the subdivision or the commercial development, or because the panels would already be there more than likely, or plan to be there when someone buys into the neighborhood, so they would kind of know what they're getting? So are you concerned about appearance both within the development and from outside the development, or just from outside, or?
Well, certainly if the panels are there and somebody chooses to buy a house, I don't care about that. I care more about somebody who maybe lives off the development. Say there's a house across from Lake Pine, you know, we put panels up on that dam. Now they look out their front window and they see a wall of panels, and to me that turned me off. And instead of looking at a beautiful lake.
Any other thoughts?
So you're mainly concerned about outside of the subdivision, is
Well,
what you're saying?
it's the impact caused by the existing.
To the existing.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're already there before the structure,
Yeah.
that's the impact, right?
Right.
That's what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
You get approval from those folks or something if that's the case. Okay.
And I think but that's why I think some guidelines put on this can kind of minimize those impacts.
And frankly, now that I think about it, I mean, you can have adjacent subdivisions, and say one subdivision goes up, puts panels on their dam, and now, to me, that devalues the adjacent property that hasn't been developed yet. So now some developers gonna have a hard time selling houses that look out onto these panels.
We're probably,
So I'm less concerned about the new, but still concerned. You know what I'm saying?
oh, we may be looking more at buffers between subdivisions a little bit too, which would minimize that.
Yeah, I don't know, I think that's also assuming that someone thinks that solar panels brings their property, I don't know if we have the,
Well, as soon
you know,
as-
it's making a lot of assumptions, so I think
I-
it's things
I wouldn't
to address. I mean,
Yeah.
that's you, but I think we need to find out if that really is the truth, if someone would think it was a nuisance, or that's an assumption, so I think you can, but I think we need to think about the broader population.
All right. Did you have any other specifics, or do you want to stew on this for a little bit? See what you come up with? Awesome. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ned.
And thanks, council. It made me think that the aesthetics of a solar panel made me think about how people have attempted to hide cell phone towers in something that looks like a tree. I don't know if they've come up with solar panel catawba leaves or
Kind of tricky to do.
magnolia, but that would be one way to get something like that in RCA
They actually have,
in an aesthetically pleasing way.
they have solar panels that are up like a flower.
It won't be long if they don't. They're probably R&D in those right now somewhere.
No, they do have certain types of.
Yep.
In California, they have solar panels on the fronts and the backs and every other side of their house because they've been there. It's kind of, your eye develops the aesthetic appeal one way or the other by what you see.
All right, now we're going to move forward.
Yes, we
Yeah,
are.
well,
All right.
Because I could talk on this all night,
No.
But you won't.
but I won't, because you're not gonna let me.
Public hearing number 5, this is a possible motion regarding various amendments to the UDO. Amanda Bunce.
Okay. These are, different amendments that are not related to one another, so I'll pause between each one to see if you have any questions. The first amendment is an amendment to the section regarding inspection fees as prescribed, which basically reflects current practices. It's just an update to the UDO, just to reflect what's the current policy and practice. And basically it states that half the fees for inspection of streets and other improvements has to be paid prior to construction plan approval.
All right, we're going to go through these one by one, so we'll pause strategically to see if anybody has a comment or question for Amanda. All right.
The next amendment is to the private play lawn section, and it simply states that once control of the HOA has been transferred from the developer to the resident members, the play lawn can then be used for private recreation other than a play lawn, but it cannot occur prior to that time.
Did something arise to cause this?
There have been some requests for developers to install play equipment and change the private play lawns, which are intended to be more open areas, into something other than that. So this clarifies the intent of this section.
All right.
And finally, this amendment is in the section regarding base material, paving, curbs, gutters, and sidewalks. And it's simply removing a phrase that really should have been removed earlier, and it really belongs in the spec standard details document and not the UDO. So it's just a cleanup.
All right.
And then I will say that staff recommends approval of these amendments, and the planning board unanimously recommended approval at their April 10th meeting.
Great. Questions for Amanda before we go to the public hearing? All right. Thank you, Amanda. I'll now open the public hearing. Don't see anyone signed up. Don't see anyone jumping out of their chair. So close the public hearing and refer the matter back to council for discussion or motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that it passes unanimously. We now move to public hearing number 6, various amendments to the UDO for stormwater management. Amanda again.
And Mike Deaton with Water Resources Department is here in case you have specific questions regarding these changes. The amendments in this grouping are related to the recent state legislation that changed terminology from stormwater best management practice, or BMP, to stormwater control measure. And so there are various terms in the UDO now that will simply be replaced with stormwater control measure or SCM as appropriate. So that's the first part of this amendment. And there are sections throughout the UDO that are affected. The second change is there are a list of uses that are permitted within the riparian buffer, and there are changes to 2 of those uses, as you can see in your report. They have made allowable piping of a stream allowed under a permit issued by the Corps, and some changes regarding utility, non-electric, and other perpendicular crossings. And again, this is consistent with recent state legislation.
Could you go over the second one? I had trouble reading.
Okay, so
Looking at it.
the second use is utility, non-electric, other than perpendicular crossings, and it changes it from an allowable use to an exempt use. And if you have a question about that, I'm going to defer to Mike to answer that question. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Good.
Go ahead,
Okay.
I might want to come back to that.
Okay. The next grouping of amendments are to the terms defined section. We are proposing to add in the definition of airport facilities. That's the state's definition, since airport facilities are allowed to encroach into the riparian buffer under certain circumstances, and we do have airfields and airstrips within Apex. So this is to clarify that this will apply to them as well. So it's just to cover our bases that what we have now, our airstrips are airport facilities. And then other changes that are related to terminology changes that I referenced earlier. And then that's actually in Amendment 4 is related to adding the state's airport facility definition. And then Part 5 is basically just making various style and formatting changes for consistency throughout the UDO. Nothing substantive in nature. Planning staff recommends approval of the changes, and the planning board unanimously recommended approval at their April 10th meeting.
Okay, can we go back to number 2 then for a second? Utility and non-electric other than perpendicular crossings, impact in zones 2 and 3. I had trouble with exempt. There's an underline on that X. It's allowable is X'd out, and then there's an X with allowable with mitigation.
I can see how the formatting makes the alignment a little tricky to read. So do you see what he's saying? I think the intent is that it's no longer allowable.
Where we crossed out the X.
You crossed out the X.
And the underline means it's new.
Right.
Right, and exempt is new, and then there was an X on allowed with mitigation. That's
No change.
impacts on zone 1.
That's no change.
That's no change. Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
Members
Mr.
of
Deaton, why don't you introduce yourself for everybody?
Mike Deaton. I'm a Stormwater and Utility Engineering Manager in Water Resources Department.
Okay.
So this is from Session Law 2013-395. Yes, that was 2013. We're in 2017. I apologize for not getting these amendments to you sooner. Been a little busy. But we've been honoring these impacts when they come in. If they're exempt, we allow them to be exempt. We don't go above and beyond the state standard on that. So your question is utility non-electric. What are we talking about? That's a sanitary sewer line for the most part. It could be a water line.
Okay.
Generally, we're talking sanitary sewer lines that are next to stream banks.
Okay.
So the change was before, you pretty much couldn't put sanitary sewer lines within 50 feet of the buffer. This session law back in 2013 allowed sanitary sewers to be in zone 2 in that outer 20 feet. So this amendment is just trying to be consistent with the state buffer rules with respect to that.
Do we usually put our sewer lines that close? It seems like flooding might
We try
be
to
a problem.
at least 50 feet out.
Yeah.
One of the things the state legislature hasn't figured out, and hopefully there's nobody in here but representing state legislature, but there's 2 T rules with water supply watershed rules that prohibit sanitary sewer lines being within 50 feet that essentially trump the buffer rules at this point. So,
Okay.
Definitely.
yeah, that's why
Thank you.
it's pretty much 50 feet now.
Okay, thank you. It makes me feel better.
All right, were there any other questions for Amanda from council? All right, with that, I'll open the public hearing. I don't see anyone has signed up, so don't see anybody else jumping up to speak, so we'll close the public hearing, refer the matter back to council for a motion or discussion leading to a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of approval indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that passes unanimously. We have now concluded our public hearings. There is no old business. We turn to page 4 of our agenda to see that there is no unfinished business, and we now move to new business number 1, possible motion for a policy regarding the administration of the facade improvement grant program within the CBD. Michael Clark.
For the past several years, the planning department has overseen the the administration of the facade improvement grant, and in past years, it's been limited to no more than $5,000 per fiscal year. As part of, with the new fiscal year, the planning department has asked for an increase in that budget. While looking at the policies and directions of how it's been administered in the past, it was discovered that there was no formal policy that was established beyond the standards that were written on the application page. We felt that was a good idea at this point, being that we were proposing some modifications to how it was going to be distributed based on the desires and requirements of the business owners and property owners in the central business district, and to make it a bit more viable in today's economy, knowing that some of these structures within our downtown are extremely expensive to restore and rehabilitate. To kind of bring you up to speed, the facade, or the central business district, is actually a fairly small area in context of the overall town of Apex. It does only cover a couple blocks. This is the main commercial area of Salem Street. The police department's located here, and it does go up to just north of the Pizza Hut is located right here, and then to East Chatham. Structures within this area for the past several years have been eligible for facade improvement grants, and they would continue to be eligible based on the proposed policy. The biggest changes of the proposed policy is that instead of having one option, business owners and property owners will have two options. The first one will be for the easy, quick fixes. This would be up to a $2,000 grant, 50% match, for things like paint and awnings. These are quick wins for the buildings, quick visual appearances, and in the overall scheme of things, they're not as expensive as some of the more structural ones. However, that being said, some of the paint requirements with lead abatement and everything else could exceed $10,000, sometimes $20,000 for some of these commercial structures. However, Tier 2 would be a maximum of $5,000, once again at 50% match, and this would be for more structural things. Brick repair, replacement of architectural features, window replacement, and all of this would still have to be done in keeping with the Secretary of Interior guidelines for historic preservation. One thing that we did discuss and was proposed at the March 14th Planning Committee meeting was to also allow for business owners to apply for both of these grants within the same fiscal year. One example of this is the restoration of 121 and 123 South Salem, where for a while it was noticeably different than the other buildings in downtown, and the new property owners have taken upon themselves to restore this building to what it once was. Their target is details from, I believe, the 1940s. I've been working with them. However, even with this proposal, they wouldn't come close to getting their max 50%. However, being that some of these developments can take multiple years, we also introduced a policy or a new portion which would limit to $10,000 within a 36-month period. This would prevent property owners from seeking an awning grant and then repointing the brick and then coming in within like a short time span and spreading out the improvements as opposed to doing it all at once. Some of the things that the facade improvement grant is currently allowing is for removal of false fronts, repair of windows and doors and cornices, repair and replacement of facade materials. These would be like the details up the top. Repair and replacement of character-defining architectural features. This one could be anything from the name and the date stamped in stone up above to some of the more ornate detailing around the doors. New awnings, exterior lighting, exterior painting, and as well as the design and construction costs. As we know with downtown, we want to make sure that remains kind of the crown jewel of Apex. And a lot of these business owners, if they have the opportunity to hire certified professionals that have background in historic preservation, it only further protects what we have here in Apex. Planning staff does recommend approval of the proposal or the policy as submitted, and I am here to answer any questions that you may have.
Does this pay out before or after the work is done?
It'd be paid out after the work is done, and it'd be subject to the property owner providing receipts to show that what was proposed was actually what was spent.
That was my second question, so thank you.
Good, good. Any other questions for Mike?
I think it's a good policy. I think it's well thought out and, you know,
Great.
Are they allowed to have solar panels in the front? No.
Not as long as they're visible from the public's right of way, but there are examples of solar panels on historic buildings sitting on tops of the roofs.
Yeah, I was just joking.
Yeah.
put you in charge of that committee.
Any,
I don't think they'd be eligible for sun improvement grants.
Okay.
is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah,
All-
thank you for all the effort. I think I might have brought this up, I can't remember, but thank you for all the effort in upgrading this, and appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you did actually. Thank you for thinking about it.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that passes unanimously. And before we get to the end of the agenda, I do want to just ask everyone who stayed for the whole thing, how did you like the televisions that we have now? These are brand new. Could you read what was on there? Were they big enough? There you go, Michael. We got a veteran here now. There we go. We used to have a projector and a screen over in that corner that was both fading and distant. And now we've got these screens so that everybody can see. So that's new. Congratulations to the staff and getting those put in. We have new screens that we can see up here, and they seem a little brighter, so they're a little easier and clearer. Even though they're same size as before, they're a lot easier to read. So just wanted to shout out, I hope everybody appreciated those, and I certainly did.